The courthouse stood tall and imposing in the heart of downtown Little Rock, enveloped in the heavy southern air that pressed down on everyone present. It was a typical humid morning, and while most people trudged through the thick atmosphere, Jenna Lawson walked with purpose. A former military veteran, she carried herself as if she were still in uniform, steadfast and confident. Clutching her jury summons in one hand and her military ID clipped to her bag, Jenna felt ready to fulfill her civic duty. Her hair, styled in neat shoulder-length braids, was pulled back, and her face was free of makeup, showcasing her natural beauty and pride. This wasn't her first time serving as a juror. She had done so in both Los Angeles and San Antonio without any issues. However, this day would prove to be vastly different. As she approached the security line at the Pulaski County Courthouse, she nodded politely at an older man ahead of her, who merely grunted in response. After passing through the metal detector, Jenna's eyes fell on the bailiff, Mark Thompson, a muscular man with a buzz cut and an air of authority that made her uneasy. He eyed her suspiciously, his gaze lingering a bit too long. "What brings you here today?" he asked, already planting seeds of doubt. Jenna maintained her calm demeanor and raised her summons. "I'm here for jury duty, scheduled for 9 a.m. Instead of accepting the paper, Mark's eyes were fixed on her braids. "Ma'am, there's a dress code for court. We can't have distractions." Jenna blinked, taken aback by his abruptness. "Excuse me?" she replied, feeling a mix of confusion and irritation. "Your hair isn't appropriate for this environment," he insisted, pointing to a sign on the wall detailing the court's dress code. "We need to maintain a professional appearance." Feeling the tension rise, Jenna stood her ground. "These are braids, and I have served my country with this hairstyle. I'm not here to cause any trouble." Mark crossed his arms, unimpressed. "You can either fix it or step out of line. I won't let you into the courtroom looking like this." Around them, the hallway buzzed with the chatter of other jurors and visitors. But for Jenna, it felt as if time had come to a standstill. She took a deep breath, her heart racing, and responded, "I don't carry a brush or clippers, and I shouldn't have to." A new young woman who had been observing quickly averted her eyes, sensing the mounting tension. "If you refuse to comply, I'll have to report you," Mark warned, his voice low but filled with authority. Jenna wanted to retort with a dozen responses, but her military training echoed in her mind, knowing when to engage and when to hold back. "Can I speak to someone else?" she asked, hoping for a different outcome. "I'm the one who decides who gets in," he snapped back, unwilling to budge. Jenna felt a wave of frustration wash over her, but she refused to let it show. With resolve simmering beneath the surface, she said, "Let me make a call." Mark shot back. "No calls are allowed past security. If you leave, you forfeit your duty. If you stay, you follow the rules." The courthouse handbook didn't specify anything about hairstyles, but that didn't matter. This was about power dynamics, and Mark was clearly relishing it. Jenna sensed this confrontation was far from over, and somehow she knew he would come to regret his actions. As Jenna was ushered into a cramped back room just past the security checkpoint, the atmosphere felt oppressive. The small space, barely larger than a storage closet, was dimly lit with cinder-block walls and a faint aroma of disinfectant. Jenna was not officially under arrest, but the sensation of confinement weighed heavily on her. Mark stood in the doorway, arms crossed, exuding an air of authority that made her skin crawl. "I'm giving you an option here," he said, adopting a patronizing tone that reminded her of a teacher addressing a misbehaving student. "We can get you sorted out and into that courtroom in 15 minutes, if you cooperate." Jenna sat on the hard plastic chair, her heart racing as she considered his words. "You still haven't explained how my hair is an issue," she challenged him, raising an eyebrow. "It's not personal, Jenna," he replied dismissively. "It's about maintaining decorum in the courtroom." She leaned forward, locking eyes with him. Is that really the issue? Because I can't help but notice that a white woman with a messy bun would walk right through this security without a second thought. His silence spoke volumes, fueling her frustration. The tension in the room was palpable, and Jenna could feel her blood boiling beneath the surface. I've served 2 tours in Iraq. I've faced much worse than this, she asserted, her voice steady but laced with resolve. None of my fellow soldiers ever tried to take my identity from me. Are you really going to force me to comply with this? Mark's expression hardened, and he leaned closer, lowering his voice. If you don't comply, I'll have to write you up for contempt of court. You think that's a joke? Jenna took a deep breath, her mind racing as she considered her options. She had been trained to fight battles, but also to pick her fights wisely. I want to speak with someone else about this, she insisted, trying to buy time. I am someone else, he retorted sharply. I decide who gets into this courtroom. If you want in, you have to fix your appearance. Feeling the walls closing in around her, Jenna weighed her options. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. I'll remember this, she said slowly, determination in her voice. You can remember whatever you want, he shot back dismissively. Just sit down. Jenna finally settled back into the chair, her hands trembling in her lap but her resolve hardening. Just so you know, she said, looking him straight in the eyes. This isn't compliance. This is survival. Mark didn't flinch. Instead, he moved closer. The buzzing of the clippers he had pulled from a drawer filled the room, cutting through the tension like a knife. Each pass of the clippers would take more than just her hair. It would strip away a part of her identity. As he brought the clippers to her head, she felt a rush of cold air against her scalp. Thick strands of hair fell to the floor like the remnants of her dignity. Jenna clenched her jaw and focused on a spot on the wall, her heart pounding in her chest. Time seemed to stretch as she endured the violation, the buzzing growing louder with every pass. She refused to break down, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her fall apart. When he finished, he handed her a paper towel, as if it were a trophy of some sort. You're good to go, he said, wiping the clippers clean and walking out of the room without another word. Jenna remained seated for a moment, feeling hollow yet strangely empowered. She didn't look in the mirror. She didn't need to. She knew exactly how she would appear, bald, exposed, but unbroken. As she stepped back into the hallway, the same young woman at the security desk averted her gaze once more, avoiding any acknowledgement of what had just happened. Jenna handed over her bag for rescanning, her posture straight and proud, despite the emotional turmoil. She was sent to courtroom 2A on the 3rd floor, where she took her seat, her fingers twitching nervously in her lap. Today was not just about jury duty. It was about standing up for herself and confronting the injustices that so many chose to ignore. Jenna stepped into courtroom 2A, her heart racing as she took in the scene. The room was sparsely populated, with a few early jurors scattered throughout the benches, a clerk organizing paperwork at the front, and another bailiff quietly monitoring the space. The air felt cooler against her newly shaved scalp, a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere she had just left behind. She could sense the whispers and glances from those around her, but she held her head high, refusing to show any sign of vulnerability. As she settled into a seat at the back, Jenna's mind raced with thoughts of the confrontation she had just endured. The humiliation of having her hair cut against her will gnawed at her, but she knew that she couldn't let it show. Instead, she focused on her breathing, practicing the techniques she had learned during her military training. Inhale deeply, hold for a moment, then exhale slowly. It was a mantra that had gotten her through many difficult moments before. Moments later, the courtroom door creaked open, and in walked Mark Thompson, now out of uniform and dressed in a gray button-up shirt, a coffee cup in hand. He scanned the room, his gaze landing on Jenna for a fraction of a second before he quickly looked away, his expression betraying a hint of discomfort. The tension in the room was palpable. It was as if everyone could feel the weight of what had transpired earlier that day. Jenna's pulse quickened as she considered confronting him then and there. calling him out for what he had done. But she knew better than to act impulsively. Instead, she remained seated, her eyes fixed on the floor, steeling herself for whatever would come next. The courtroom was quiet, yet the silence felt charged with anticipation, as if everyone was waiting for something to break. A clerk entered to announce the judge's delay due to traffic, and the murmurs among the jurors began to rise. Jenna felt a sense of solidarity with the other jurors, who were all gathered here, ready to fulfill their duty. They too had their own stories, their own reasons for being there. She could see a few of them glancing at her, their curiosity palpable, but she chose not to engage. Instead, she continued to breathe deeply, focusing on maintaining her composure. Suddenly, the back door swung open, and the courtroom fell silent. Judge Emily Carter entered, her presence commanding as she donned the black robe that signified her authority. Jenna's heart raced as she recognized the judge. She had served alongside Emily during her deployment overseas. The sight of her brought a rush of memories, of camaraderie, of shared struggles, and of strength. Emily moved with confidence, her curly hair framing her face proudly, an image of resilience that Jenna found comforting. As Emily took her seat and prepared to address the court, her eyes swept over the gallery, landing on Jenna. For a brief moment, recognition flickered across her face, and the warmth of their shared history filled the room. Jenna held her breath, knowing that Emily would see the change in her appearance and the pain of what had just transpired. "Before we proceed," Emily began, her voice steady and commanding, "I want to acknowledge someone special in the gallery today." Jenna's heart leapt as she realized the judge was about to speak about her. "Sergeant Jenna Lawson, a fellow soldier and someone I deeply respect. She has served our country with honor and distinction." The room was still, and Jenna could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Emily continued, "I noticed something was wrong today, and I want to address it openly. What happened earlier in the courthouse is unacceptable. No one should ever be humiliated for their appearance, especially not a fellow soldier." The judge's words were a balm to Jenna's wounded spirit. The acknowledgement of her struggle in front of everyone felt like a validation of her experience. Judge Emily Carter's voice resonated throughout the courtroom, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. Jenna felt a surge of emotions as she listened to her old friend speak. Emily's acknowledgement of Jenna's service and the unfair treatment she had just endured brought tears to her eyes. It was a moment of validation that she had desperately needed, and for the first time since the incident, she felt a flicker of hope. Today, a veteran walked into this building ready to fulfill her civic duty. Emily continued, her gaze steady and unwavering. Instead of being welcomed, she was met with humiliation and disrespect. This is not just a personal affront. It is an affront to every person who seeks justice in this courtroom. The jurors shifted in their seats, some nodding in agreement, while others exchanged glances, sensing the gravity of the situation. Mark Thompson stood silently near the wall, his face pale and expression tense. Jenna could see the discomfort etched across his features as he realized the implications of Emily's words. She felt a surge of empowerment wash over her. This was not just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had ever faced discrimination or humiliation for being themselves. "Mr. Thompson," Emily called, her voice firm yet composed. "Would you please approach the bench?" The courtroom fell silent as Mark hesitated, the weight of the moment bearing down on him. He stepped forward slowly, his demeanor shifting from authoritative to uncertain. Jenna's heart raced as she watched the interaction unfold. "Can you explain to this court why you felt it was acceptable to treat Sergeant Lawson in such a demeaning manner?" Emily's question was pointed, and the room held its breath, waiting for his response. Mark stuttered, struggling to find the right words. "I was just following procedure, Judge. We have had complaints about distractions in the courtroom." Emily cut him off. "You were following a procedure that has no place in this courthouse. You took a clippers to a black woman's head, all in the name of decorum. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her as Emily's words hung in the air, echoing the injustice of the situation. "Sir, there is no rule in this courthouse or any court under federal jurisdiction that prohibits natural hairstyles," Emily continued, her gaze piercing. What you did today was not only inappropriate, but also discriminatory." The murmurs in the gallery grew louder, with several jurors exchanging incredulous looks. Mark's expression shifted from uncertainty to defensiveness. "I didn't mean to offend anyone," he muttered, but his words fell flat. Emily stood firm, her authority unquestionable. "You didn't just offend someone. You humiliated a veteran and disregarded her dignity. You need to understand that actions have consequences." Jenna felt a sense of vindication as she listened to Emily. The judge's words were powerful, and they resonated deeply within her. "Mr. Thompson, I am placing you on administrative leave pending an investigation into this matter," Emily stated decisively. "You will not return to this courtroom until further notice." As Mark turned to leave, Jenna noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The tension that had permeated the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of solidarity among those present. Emily turned her attention back to the gallery, her expression softening as she looked directly at Jenna. "I apologize for what you experienced today, Sergeant Lawson. It should never have happened." Jenna's heart swelled with gratitude. This was the acknowledgement she had longed for, the recognition that her experience mattered. "Thank you, Your Honor," Jenna replied, her voice steady. Emily smiled softly, and in that moment, an unspoken bond formed between them, grounded in shared experiences and mutual respect. As Mark Thompson exited the courtroom, Jenna felt a wave of relief wash over her. The tension that had filled the space moments before began to lift, replaced by an air of palpable solidarity among the jurors and court staff. Judge Emily Carter, with her fierce commitment to justice, had not only defended Jenna's dignity, but had also set a precedent for how such matters would be handled in the future. Jenna watched as Emily addressed the room, her voice calm yet powerful. "What happened here today is a stark reminder of the responsibilities we hold in this courtroom. This space is meant for justice, for fairness, and for respect. No one should ever feel diminished because of their appearance, their identity, or their service to our country." The murmurs of agreement echoed through the gallery, affirming the significance of her words. The tension that had once gripped Jenna's heart started to ease as she felt the support of those around her. She noticed several jurors nodding, their eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. It was as if the shared experience of witnessing the confrontation had bonded them, and they were now united in their commitment to uphold dignity and respect for all. Emily continued, "We are all here to serve justice, and that requires us to recognize the humanity in one another. I want to assure you that this court will take steps to prevent incidents like this from occurring in the future." She glanced at Jenna, her expression sincere. "We will be revising our guidelines to ensure that no one faces discrimination based on their hairstyle or appearance in this courtroom again." Jenna felt a swell of gratitude as Emily's words sank in. This was more than just a personal victory. It was a step toward systemic change. The realization that her struggle could lead to greater awareness and policy changes filled her with hope. She looked around the room, noticing the supportive expressions on the faces of the jurors and court staff, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Now, let's proceed with our jury selection," Emily said, her tone shifting to a more formal cadence. "We will continue with the process, but I want to remind everyone that respect and understanding must guide our interactions here." As she spoke, Jenna felt a sense of empowerment. She had entered the courthouse that morning feeling vulnerable, but now she stood tall, knowing she had made a difference. As the jury selection process began, Jenna listened intently, her eyes occasionally meeting those of her fellow jurors. She could see the shift in their demeanor. They were more engaged, more aware of the implications of their roles. Each person seemed to carry a newfound respect for the responsibilities they held, and Jenna felt a sense of camaraderie she hadn't anticipated. When Emily called for a brief recess, several jurors approached Jenna, offering words of support and solidarity. "What you went through today was awful," one young woman said, her voice filled with compassion. "I can't believe they treated you that way." Jenna smiled, appreciating the kindness of strangers who now felt like allies. As the break came to an end, Emily re-entered the courtroom, her presence commanding respect. "Thank you all for your understanding and support today," she said, looking directly at Jenna. "Sometimes, standing up for what's right can lead to powerful change. Let's carry that spirit forward as we continue our work together." Jenna nodded, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. She had faced a significant challenge, but with the support of those around her and the strength of her own convictions, she had emerged not only unbroken, but empowered. She was determined to make the most of this experience, not just for herself, but for others who might face similar struggles in the future. As the courtroom proceedings resumed, Jenna felt a sense of purpose filling her. Emily Carter's words lingered in her mind, reminding her of the power of standing up for what is right. The atmosphere had shifted. An unspoken understanding hung in the air, binding the jurors and court staff together in their shared commitment to justice. Each person present seemed to recognize the significance of the moment, and Jenna was determined to carry that energy with her. After the jury selection concluded, Emily called for a brief recess. As the jurors filed out of the courtroom, many approached Jenna, offering their support and solidarity. "I'm really sorry for what you had to go through today," one juror named Sarah said, her eyes filled with empathy. "It's unacceptable." Jenna smiled, grateful for the kindness that had emerged from this painful experience. "I appreciate it," Jenna replied, her voice steady. "It's important that we acknowledge these issues and work together to prevent them in the future." The conversation allowed her to connect with others who had witnessed the injustice, reinforcing her belief that change could happen when people united against discrimination. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, whispers of the incident began to ripple through the courthouse. Jenna overheard conversations among court personnel discussing the need for sensitivity training and clearer guidelines regarding personal appearance. It was evident that the impact of her experience was reaching far beyond her own situation. Jenna felt a sense of pride. Her struggle was not in vain. As the days passed, Emily wasted no time in taking action. She filed a formal complaint against Mark Thompson, detailing everything that had transpired. The incident was documented and reviewed by the courthouse's Human Resources Department. Jenna learned that Emily had also reached out to the local media, ensuring that the story would gain traction and spark a wider conversation about discrimination in the courtroom. One afternoon, Jenna received a handwritten letter from Emily. In it, the judge expressed her gratitude for Jenna's courage and resilience. "Your strength in the face of adversity is inspiring," Emily wrote. "Together, we can create a more inclusive environment in our court system. Thank you for standing up and for being a voice for change." Jenna felt a tear slip down her cheek as she read the words. It was a reminder that her experience had meaning beyond her own pain. It was part of a larger movement toward justice. Months later, Jenna was invited to speak at a veterans panel at a local community college. Initially hesitant, she felt compelled to share her story. As she stood in front of the audience, she could see young faces filled with curiosity and concern. "I didn't come here to seek sympathy," she began, her voice strong. "I came to talk about the importance of standing up for yourself and others when facing discrimination." She recounted the events of that day in the courthouse, emphasizing the power of community support and advocacy. "Sometimes it feels like we're alone in our struggles," Jenna said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But remember, every voice matters. Don't be afraid to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable."
Change begins with us. The audience listened intently, and after the panel, Several students approached her, expressing their gratitude for her words.
Your story inspired me to stand up for my friends who face similar issues, one young woman said, her voice filled with determination. Jenna felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her experience had sparked a ripple effect of awareness and action. As time passed, Jenna found herself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had unfolded since that fateful day in the courthouse. The experience had been both harrowing and transformative, leading her to a deeper understanding of the complexities of discrimination and the importance of resilience. She was no longer just a juror. She had become a symbol of strength and advocacy for those who felt marginalized. Jenna continued to attend her jury duty sessions, each day walking into the courthouse with her head held high. The sting of that morning's humiliation had dulled slightly, replaced by a fierce determination to advocate for herself and others. She had learned that standing firm in one's identity was not merely an act of defiance, it was a declaration of self-worth. Her bald head, once a source of pain, had become a testament to her resilience and a reminder of the strength that lay within her. The conversation sparked by her ordeal had grown beyond the walls of the courthouse. Emily Carter's actions had initiated a series of changes within the judicial system, including mandatory sensitivity training for all court personnel and the establishment of clear guidelines that prohibited discrimination based on appearance. Jenna had received updates about these changes, and she felt a sense of pride, knowing that her experience had contributed to a larger movement for justice and equity. One afternoon, as Jenna was heading to a local cafe, she noticed a group of young people gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Stand up against discrimination," and "Your identity matters." They were part of a grassroots campaign advocating for inclusivity within the judicial system. Jenna approached them, her heart swelling with pride. She introduced herself and shared her story, which resonated deeply with the activists. They welcomed her warmly, eager to learn from her experience and to collaborate on future initiatives. Jenna also began to receive invitations to speak at various events, each one an opportunity to share her story and empower others. During one such engagement, she stood before a diverse audience, recounting her journey. We often think of courage as a loud act, but sometimes it's the quiet strength that makes the biggest difference, she articulated. Sometimes it's simply about standing your ground, refusing to be silenced, and finding allies who will stand with you. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People shared their own experiences of discrimination and expressed gratitude for her willingness to speak out. Jenna realized that her story was not just her own. It was intertwined with the stories of countless others who had faced similar challenges. She was no longer alone. She was part of a community dedicated to change. As Jenna continued her advocacy work, she received a letter from Emily, inviting her to participate in a panel discussion about reforming courtroom policies. The judge expressed her admiration for Jenna's courage and the impact she had made. "Your presence in that courtroom shifted the narrative," Emily wrote. "You've shown us all that standing up for oneself is a powerful catalyst for change." In that moment, Jenna understood the true power of her journey. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her vulnerability into strength. The journey was ongoing, but she was committed to ensuring that her experience would lead to lasting change, not just for herself, but for everyone who felt invisible or marginalized.